Everybody, and welcome to this short video. Following our National Tree Week this year, we have planted about 150,000 trees ourselves and our associated organisations, which include Easy Treesie, from whom we'll have a word in a minute. The question now arises, of course, is keeping them alive. And to introduce how we are going to keep them alive, I'll pass you over to Easy Treesie founder, Orla Farrell.
Thank you very much, Brendan. And thanks so much to the Tree Council for their support for our project, which is planting 1 million trees with Ireland's 1 million school children and their communities. So we're nearly at the halfway mark, Brendan.
I'd say we're past it, are we?
It's round about that. We have to sit down and do a count now that our planting season is over. And as we're coming up to Biodiversity Week now, this project that started in Fingal with Fingal County Council and your good self, Brendan, who came to support our very first film made by Éanna Ní Lamhna of the Tree Council on the 28 native trees of Ireland, that Irish Tree Trail. So that was, if you like, the what to plant, the gold standard on what we like to plant. And now that we have so many planted, of course, it's really important to keep them alive. And for that, we're very grateful to Cormac Downey today, the Fingal Tree Officer and incoming President of the Tree Council, who's taking the baton from Éanna and is going to give us some advice for our children and their communities all over the country who have planted saplings in the last few seasons and how to keep them alive. Over to you, Cormac.
Thanks, Orla. Thanks for that introduction. As you say, I'm the Vice President of the Tree Council and the Tree Officer for Fingal County Council. So I just really, I suppose, as Orla said, we've over the last season now we've planted. A lot of people have got a lot of trees into the ground, and I suppose a big message that we're trying to get across is we're trying to establish trees, not just plant. Planting is just the initial part of establishing. So we now have a lot of trees in the ground, and we want to make sure that they establish. And we're looking for really just to keep them alive for the first season or two, or even first three seasons. After that, they should be able to look after themselves. So we have to be really, really mindful of what we've planted, where we've planted them. Let's not forget where they are, and to keep an eye on them and see how they're getting on. So a few basic points in keeping trees alive for the first couple of seasons. Water is essential in keeping young trees alive. This will, of course, have a lot to do with the weather. We've had some very wet weather up to recently, which has been, as Orla says, been a great help to the young saplings that are in the ground. We as we know, weather is very changeable. We're going to get extremes over the summer for sure. So we have to keep an eye on the weather forecast. Is there a dry spell coming on? And if there is, maybe just keep an eye on the trees and add a bit of water to them when you can. I think that's first on the list is water, really. And once you do that, and that's very easy. If you're walking home from school, you're passing a hedgerow, maybe you've planted or you've been involved in helping to plant, or an area of trees where you've maybe stuck a few saplings in yourself. Just keep an eye out and see how they're doing. The next, for me, a very important next point would be weeding. You want to, most of the trees now, most of the young saplings may have been planted in grass, which at the time was quite low. This time of year and during the summer, of course, this grass is going to get really, really high and can hide the trees that you've planted, which you really don't. You want to keep these trees very visible, just in case whoever's maintaining that area, maybe someone cutting grass, might not realize that the trees are there. So, a very simple way around that is to maybe just trample with your feet the grass around around the sapling. So the sapling is very obvious. Now, ideally, we would, if we were planting a single tree with a lot of time, we would remove the sod layer of grass around the tree and maybe put on some mulch, which is like kind of composted chippings or something like that. And that would keep the weeds down and would also keep the long grass away from that tree and leave the tree very obvious. But in general, most of the trees that we've planted this year, and probably yourselves, will be in grass, and that grass will get long. So a little walk around the area with your feet, just trample the grass down every so often, and it will pop up again. So, and what you probably want to avoid is trying to cut that grass around the tree, because the more you cut the grass, the more the grass will suck nutrients out of the ground to replace the bit that you've just cut off. So if you were to make a list of an ideal situation, the best situation is to have no grass around it and desodded. If that's not the case and there is grass there, then the next best situation is not to cut it, but just trample it down. And I suppose the last kind of situation would be is where you do cut the grass and you're trying to maintain it. But as I said, you're probably best to avoid that. So if in your case and in general, it's just a quick tramp around the tree with your feet and let everyone see the tree, and the tree will get more light that way, and there'll be less chance of it getting damaged by a mower or a strimmer. So if you have a tree planted that you have desodded and you had mulch applied to it over the course of the year, you want to make sure that that mulch is kept topped up and it doesn't get kicked away or get very thin. So you'd be looking at maybe 2 to 4 inches of thickness of mulch, and that's 4 inches would be the uppermost of the limit, but definitely at least 2 inches. And again, when you're watering your tree, this mulch will help retain the moisture, which is very useful in hot, dry conditions. And if I know a lot of the trees you might have planted might have been whips, little really small saplings, and they won't have stakes. They won't have needed stakes. But if you have planted bigger trees, and possibly you needed to use a stake, then over the course of definitely the first and second year, you want to check your stakes to make sure that they're still that they're not loose, and any of the tree ties they're still tied properly and not rubbing against the bark of your tree. And that's easy. That's just a quick look to see everything's okay. And as you're looking and walking past your trees and checking them out, just check to see, do they look right? And you don't have to be an expert for this. If the leaves are green, that's the first thing. If there's plenty of leaves on them and they're green. If they're not green and they're starting to turn brown, then there's something up, and it's probably water. That's usually the main reason that happens, especially in the summer, during the summer. So it's just to have a quick look to see what condition your tree is. And another thing you might keep an eye out for is the bark on the stem of the sapling, to see if maybe there's some rabbits in the area and they might be gnawing at the bark and stripping it. Now, if that's the case, you might want to talk to someone about getting possibly some what they call spiral guards, and these are little bits of plastic that you can wrap around a thin stem, and that'll just keep rabbits and hares away from causing too much damage. So you can keep an eye on the tree, on its condition, and how it's doing. And as I say, it is as easy as looking at it and seeing if it looks like a normal tree should. So I mean, they're really just the main points that you need to just keep in mind as you're passing your tree. Don't forget where the trees are. Go and have a look and go and enjoy the work that you put into this planting, and watch the trees as they progress and as they establish and grow. And once you get past year 3, so they're in the ground for 3 seasons, then they should be established enough to look after themselves. And in terms of watering, you just maybe want to keep an eye out for really, really dry periods during the summer. Those older trees, 3-year-old, 4-year-old trees may still need water, but in general, if the tree has made it to year 3 or 4, it should be able to look after itself, and just keep going and visiting your tree and enjoy the work you've put into it. I hope that's of some help. Brendan, maybe back to you.
No, I think that's all very, very sound advice. As I say, if you can get the tree to 3 or 4 years old, most cases, you're in the clear, especially if you've got planted them from, saplings, because they will have developed pretty good root systems and all, better actually than if you planted bigger trees. So if they survive 4 years, you should be fine with them.
And I would say, sorry, Brendan, I would say that if it's natural as it is in the wild, that some trees just won't grow. You may have a certain amount of trees that will just die, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you've done wrong. That's just kind of a natural loss. So in that case, the following planting season, you might be able to replace those gaps that have been left. So just keep that in mind. It's just another place to plant a tree the next year.
Yeah, I suppose it's fair to say probably in almost any average year, you're going to lose between 5 and 10% of the trees for some reason that, it's just going to happen.
It's nature. It's just nature. And it's not anyone's fault. You'd have done everything right. And even the professionals, when they do it, there's a percentage that they will lose. So don't worry about it. But it's always good to mark those places, and it's a chance to replace them the next year.
I found that really, really interesting, Cormac. Thank you so much. And, especially the bit about not all the trees surviving. And that's why when we've had children out planting, they've planted more than one, because we wouldn't like them to feel very disappointed if the tree didn't make it. And as you say, that's just nature's work.
It's certainly not their fault at all. No, it's just nature. And it's just that's how things work in nature. And as I say, it's just it's actually quite interesting to see. Some things die, some things live. So it's from that aspect it can be quite interesting. So I wouldn't take it personally. It's just these things happen. So just check those areas that you may have losses and plant them up the next year.
Well, I do believe what you're saying, Cormac, having walked around Baldoyle, where this Fingal town now has managed to get the national award for the tidy towns in the last year. And the trees are, by and large, looking after themselves now. It's really great to see. And you were mentioning about the trees that don't make it, and we've certainly found that there are species that might be very happy, for example, of course we've chosen them with the site in mind, but even given that, a place where you'd expect alder and willow to survive very well down beside the stream where we planted them originally with Fingal County Council in Baldoyle. But sometimes trees you'd expect to survive, for some reason they don't, and then other ones are really happy there. And because we planted them at that density of 3,000 per hectare or so, very densely, well, it just means that there's a bit of room. Isn't that right, Brendan?
There's kind of two main reasons why we would plant, that densely. One is to get the grass suppressed, because as Cormac said, the biggest competitor with the trees is the grass. In the early years, they're taking all the nutrients away. So if you plant them quite densely, they shade out the grass quite quickly. But the other is you can afford to lose the normal wear and tear of trees, the other one from rabbits, the other one get walked on, whatever. And you still have lots and lots of trees left to give you a woodland at some stage in the future.
Yeah, and I suppose you have to realize when you're planting trees closest when they're young, as they grow up, they will compete eventually. So you in years to come, you will kind of you will lose trees, and the tree beside it will get bigger, and it will be able to get bigger because it's the other one is beside it is gone, and so you get these bigger trees and you get your woodlands established that way over time. So it's all part of nature. As I say, I wouldn't take it personally if your tree doesn't grow. Just get the next one in and look after it. I think it's just for a little bit of effort for the first season or two. Just check your trees, and that little bit of effort will be paid off tenfold. Once you get them past the year 2, year 3, then they should be able to look after themselves. So you'll be able to sit back and enjoy.
Thank you, Cormac. That's a really good point, the enjoying of the trees. I must say, it was such a pleasure to walk out in Northwood Park in Santry with you there a few weeks ago. It was a frosty morning, so it was just beautiful out there in the park with the birds singing. I mean, the local community gardeners have just won the top 10 in the world People's Choice there, and they have taken on picking any rubbish that was there in that area, even though almost no rubbish. And the people who were out there last week with us from Salesforce, who are managing the tech on the World Trillion Tree Project, which we're part of. So they really enjoyed a day away from their screens and their desks, being out trampling on the grass, doing a little bit of tree maintenance. So while it sounds like hard work, maybe trampling the grass and just keeping the trees keeping light.
Yeah, it's not. I couldn't describe that as hard work, to be honest, Orla. It's and as you say, you're out there, you're in among the trees that you've planted,
Exactly.
and that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Exactly. So I think that's a very good note to finish off. That let's enjoy our trees. And Cormac, I'd like to thank you so much for your contribution. Any of our listeners who wants to learn more about tree establishment, they can listen to your National Tree Week webinar, which is also going to be posted on the Irish Tree Council website. So thanks again, Cormac, for addressing our young people and for the support of Fingal County Council, and indeed all the local authorities which have followed your great example in supporting children and their communities to find space for nature.
Not at all, Orla. You're very welcome. Thanks very much.
I'm Kyla and I'm 11 years old.
My name's Aisling, I'm 11 and I'm planting a tree.
I'm Padraig Mahal, I'm 12 years old and I'm going to plant a tree.
My name is Gia, I'm 11 years old and today we're planting a tree.
My name's Eva and I'm 12.
Step 2 is you're going to want to take your tree and put it in the hole.
They take the carbon dioxide that we breathe out and then turn into oxygen that we can breathe in.
Oh, it's lovely. Very satisfying.
To plant amazing trees to save the world. The last step is to put it to bed with some water.